Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Wife might have cheated. Is this enough evidence? Use the timestamp to jump to the next update if you're familiar with this story. Wife, 31-year-old, and I, 33-year-old, have known each other for 8 years, married for 6. First of all, thank you for taking the time to read this, but also, please bear with me as I haven't slept properly in the last few days and my head's been spinning around like crazy. My wife went on this work trip abroad with a few coworkers. First couple of days, they were all staying at a hotel, and even though she had very busy days, she always FaceTimed me at the end of the day. Everything seemed fine. On the third day, 2 days ago, they moved to a different location to work on a big project with other local coworkers. The day was stressful, so she didn't write me much throughout the day. She writes me 4 hours later, at around 11 p.m. their time, saying that she's going to the sauna with her female friend she's supposedly sharing a room with. Let's call her V. She's from abroad. The sauna is in this compound where they're staying at, and it's something common to do in the country. Except it's quite late for that, given the long day they had. She then writes me 2.5 hours later, at 1:30 a.m. saying, "I'm going to sleep. Write you when I get up. Love you." And I write her back. No mention of being tired, no mention of not being able to do a call, no mention of what she had been doing for the last 2.5 hours. I'm not controlling, it's just something she always communicates. It felt really distant, cold, and out of character, and I got this really bad gut feeling. My gut feelings are usually right, and I don't disregard them. For reasons I'll explain further down, I had a bad feeling the whole trip, but nothing that really tingled my spidey senses until now. So I had to find out what was up. She left her laptop at home, which syncs messages, so I could see things happen in real time. She had a message thread with this guy. Let's call him K. Last message she sent him was at the same time she wrote me last, and it was a single emoji, a heart with a band-aid. I'd never even seen that emoji before and have no clue what it means. I left the laptop open while I was getting ready for bed, and holy F, I see a message from my wife saying, "Come to room 3. At this point, my heart is racing like crazy. I'm shouting, I'm crying, I'm devastated because even though I had a bad feeling, my wife was the last person on earth I ever thought would do something like this. I had a prior relationship where I was cheated on a couple of times, and I learned to recognize the type. My wife was the complete opposite, or she's just excelling at hiding it. So I'm running through all these scenarios in my head. Maybe room 3 is something else, and they're going to party with other people a bit more. But why write only K? Maybe he's going through some stuff and needs to talk. Maybe she's asking K to come to her room for V, the roommate. But why didn't V write K in the first place? What would K do with V and my wife in the room anyway? Barring any kinky stuff? Is my wife even staying at the same room as V? She told me a week before she left she was, but they could have switched? While my mind is still racing, I see that K's message hasn't been delivered. Maybe he doesn't have battery. 1 hour later, K writes, "Going there." The message stays unread. So I'm thinking maybe she's asleep and he'll knock on the door and go back and write her back. But the message stays unread for the next 7 hours, during which I force myself to stay awake because it's the only way I can see anything happen. And then, in real time, I see the whole thread get deleted. At this point, the few legitimate scenarios I was holding in my head completely vanish. 1 hour later, my wife writes another coworker saying she has K's phone and to let him know. K and my wife don't write each other the whole day. Now, the reason why I had a bad feeling the whole trip was because a couple weeks earlier, my wife, a friend, and I went out for drinks and met her coworkers. I had met a few of them prior, but not K. I heard of K in passing, and I don't think she even works directly with him, which made sense as to why I would always hear much more about the other coworkers. We go to this bar, we're dancing, K is holding something in his hand which my wife takes from him and puts in her pocket in a teasing way. And that's when I had my first gut feeling. She's acting very differently towards this coworker versus everyone else. We all go outside, I'm talking to someone else, and she's talking to K. She's very close. She touches his arm for 2 seconds too long. A couple of minutes later, they hug. I'm pissed because this whole week she had been overworked, going out with her coworkers, and showing little affection towards me, but she's doing it towards this guy. We go home, I say exactly that, and I'm going to sleep on the sofa. She blows things out of proportion. "How do you dare?" Packs things in a bag and says she's going to a hotel. It's too late, no hotel will check her in, so I say, "Go ahead." She leaves, but I don't hear the door downstairs close. She left her iPad at home, where she's logged into Instagram. Not proud of it once again, but I had to see what's up. I see a thread with her making some plans for a drink with this other guy she hasn't seen in years, but it didn't seem that suspicious. As far as I know, they've always been just friends. And then I see that get deleted in real time. So I get really hung up on it, missing other threads being deleted that I didn't get a chance to read. Because I was drunk, I text her about these plans. She first says he only wants to see her friend. I told her that's a lie. Then she says they didn't really make plans. I told her I saw the messages. She keeps denying it, never saying that it's just a friend or something. Then she switches to, "How dare you doubt me?" again, and, "I'm so stressed at work. I'm sorry I'm not enough. I can't be everything to everyone." I tell her if I misunderstood something, that she can come upstairs and we can clear it up. She comes, but again doesn't clear or admit anything, and the convo is all about how she isn't enough. She was crying uncontrollably. I felt bad, so I went to sleep next to her. Because both of our weeks were quite busy, we don't talk about this again, but we make plans to do so when she comes back. The last couple of days before she left, we went on dates and had amazing sex. In the message thread with Kay, I could see some slightly flirty messages from both sides about her sleeping on his shoulder on the plane. No way they got adjacent seats due to how the check-ins work, so they had to purposefully move. Although since all coworkers spent a lot of time together in person, it makes sense that there's not a lot more in that thread. Yesterday, she got to the hotel. I know because of Find My iPhone. So I waited for her to write me or call me. I waited for half an hour, and I wrote her asking her if she was still out because I was going to be. She calls me saying she just got to her room. Her neck, all the way down to between her breasts, is red. I can see due to what she's wearing. Like when we're making out and my beard is short and it rubs on her skin. I ask her about it. She acts surprised like she didn't know and tells me it was probably her scarf. But this clearly is on one side only and goes down further than a scarf would. I didn't want to press further because I can't let her know I'm onto her too much. I still need hard evidence. We proceeded to talk for an hour, but she was a bit fussy. Not like other days when she gets to the room and immediately starts getting ready for bed. She has pretty much done the same routine, always. It felt like she was delaying getting ready for bed, except for putting on pajamas. So I keep stalling, trying to see if Kay is going to write her or vice versa. And then I ask her about the sauna. She says she barely went in because it was packed. Then I ask her other details and they don't seem to line up. I had been awake for 36 plus hours at this point, so I was recording the convo to make sense of it later. We ended the call. I finally went to sleep. Sleeping never felt so good. Woke up this morning, no messages from Kay or my wife to each other. She FaceTimes me a couple hours later. Besides a quick check-in, she says, "I'll write you whenever I can. If I don't, it's because there's a lot happening, and it's hard balancing being here and being there. It's not because I'm doing something else that you might be thinking." If you made it till here, thank you, thank you, thank you. My head has been spinning round these last couple of days. There's so much I'm not sure of, but divorce has been on my mind constantly. We had plans to buy a house and have a baby next year. Even if nothing happened, she betrayed my trust by telling me she was going to sleep and then inviting Kay to her room. Even if that hadn't happened, she betrayed my trust by maintaining a closer relationship with Kay after I said I wasn't comfortable with that. She's risking her career. I'm sure her coworkers would be suspicious by now, and her relationship. And I can't really live the rest of my life looking at every single thing as a possible sign of cheating. She had 2 symmetrical spot bruises on her thighs that I only noticed a couple of days after she went out with her coworkers that she couldn't explain, and I sure as hell didn't cause them, or feeling forced to snoop. But at the same time, I feel like this is all too weak as evidence for a divorce. Our accounts are separated. Logistics reasons, too long to explain. So it's not that simple. The car is in her name. I can't just threaten divorce or discuss it with her because I'm afraid she'll move the money and I'll have to start from scratch. And ultimately, I'm heartbroken because, damn, I love her so much. She is the love of my life, my soulmate. But I also feel like the person I love isn't there anymore. And all it took was a couple of days. I really don't know what to do next. What if I'm wrong? Edit. She's now being very flirtatious with me over text. She hasn't been like this in weeks. Edit 2. Forgot to mention she's been working from home since she joined the company in January, so she's only met her coworkers maybe a dozen times in person. Edit 3. There's no new apps purchased on the App Store that I can see, but something occurred to me. They both use Slack for work, which is much more convenient and hideable than starting to use a separate app. Edit 4. She called me again. She's back at the first location, staying at the hotel. Worked from the office all day. One of the first things she told me was her arm was bruised and she might have bruised it at the other location, but doesn't really know how. I couldn't see it on camera because it was too dark. She then said, "I'm all bruised up. Well, not all bruised up, just this bruise." Weird. November 4th update below. Hello everyone. I tried posting this from my other account because I was on my phone and I really needed to share this with y'all. Also, I know many of you are concerned and I've been radio silent, but I got filtered out by bots. Sorry for taking so long to update y'all. Since my last update, we kept going back and forth. I tried pressing for more details. She kept denying, crying, saying that she's sorry, that she cheated, she lied, she was a piece of crap, she would do everything for us to be together again. She would beg. I went down 2 holes in my belt this last week. I guess I'll finally have a 6-pack. So I decided Monday was going to be self-care day. I went to lunch to a small village next to where I was staying, with no plans, and I was drawn to the scent of wood oven cooked bread and food, and I went in and sat down. Only 2 tables inside. The other one had 3 old ladies taking their time eating and talking. A neighbor came by. They chatted. They made me smile for the first time in a bit. Reminded me of how simple things can be. Then I went for a massage. Possibly the most transformational massage I've ever had. The knot in my stomach was gone. My mind was a bit clearer. Then I went back to the hotel because she had sent me an email with detailed timelines earlier that day, and I hadn't read it yet. I sit down at the bar, get myself a virgin pina colada. No alcohol since this all started. I need my mind clear. I read the email. It detailed so many aspects and checkpoints of her day, including who she took an Uber with, when she went to the bathroom, stuff like that. But the details on what mattered were the same. And somehow, she didn't seem to remember at which points she called me, or when she told me she was going to sleep. All of this is easily confirmed. This is where it became excruciatingly clear. There's no coming back from this. I still tried, y'all. I sent her an email with all 3 versions of increasing admission of initiation responsibility. Nothing else. And she brushed it off as, "These are the things I remember, and I just remembered other details." I asked to meet her the next day, Tuesday, and her best friend should be there, both for support and as a witness. No contact was hard. We kept talking. I kept asking why V would open the door for someone if there had been no talk, no signs, nothing. Asked if they hadn't talked in the morning. She told me V and K said, "She called me." She then told me V was hitting on him, sat on his lap at the sauna, and V might have thought it was for her. I eventually did something which I consider to have gone a little too far, but I was having anti-harassment training at work, and it was so appropriate it seemed like the universe was laughing at me, or sending me a sign. I told her if Kay had actually gone into her bed uninvited, and V opened the door for him. This was a case for sexual harassment assault, and would have to be investigated. She backed off a bit with the begging and the apologies. Later, my wife sent me a screen snap of the message she sent V saying, "I'm sorry to do this, but I need your answer about something." V said she was unreachable at the moment. Then, moments later, my wife sends me another screen cap where V says, "I was shocked by your husband's call and you involving me into something I have no relation to at all. Please stop it." I genuinely cried when I saw this. I think she sent me this because she was preparing a "how dare you" before it all sank in. I told her that yes, I talked to V, and that's why I asked her to keep V out of this. My wife said she'd keep her out of it and wouldn't ask her anything else. I knew meeting my wife in person was going to be hard, but I had to tell her how she made me feel in person, and I wanted to give her one last chance to say something. Anything. I wrote a text because I knew I couldn't go by memory, and if I went by heart, I would be too hard on her. So I zoomed out, told her what I went through, the damage it caused, the pain that lingers, the scars it will leave. She left. Her friends stayed. Her friend asked me if she had lied like this before. I thought she was going for the "this is out of character" approach, but no. She tells me she knows how good of a liar she is. She gave me a possible explanation of where it stems from. She believes in self-development, and so do I. I told her about my ex. I told her about why I can't possibly ever go back to it. She told me my wife lied and told her 2 different versions about what happened, and it made me cry. I'm glad she's here for her. Later that night, my wife sent me another series of texts which implied her self-deleting, asking me to send stuff to her parents, to send her my bank account info so she can send me everything. Then later, she told me she'd talk to my lawyers today. I told her I couldn't deal with all she wrote me, and I would read it today. Today she told me that it was okay, that I should focus on work. Then asked me how work is going, if I want to share. She sent me an email recounting our history and every place she failed me by not being enough. I had to fight hard to hold back tears at the coffee shop. She invited me to a shared iCloud album titled Love. Haven't accepted. I now understand why no contact is important. I'll have to endure this. I won't be swayed. I read the texts between her and Kay often because I have a tendency to forget and let go, and I need to remind myself that this happened, that it was real, and I know what she's going through now is legit, but so is what I went and am going through. Y'all will say this isn't healthy, but it's how I know how to deal with it right now. Thank you for staying with me this whole time. I couldn't have done this without y'all. There will be days when I'll doubt my decision, and I'll come back to this crazy soap opera and your words of advice, encouragement, and support. November 4th update. Hey everyone. I know I said I didn't care about the truth, but the fact is these things randomly pop in my head when I least expect, and I go down the rabbit hole. I need them to remind me that all of this was real, and she can't sway me into thinking this wasn't premeditated and it was work stress, etc. This time, the rabbit hole might have been the most productive one yet. Some of you might recall one of the convos from the original post between my wife and Kay, the convo about the book and gum.
Where's your book?
Is it there?
Maybe.
You can deliver it to my room.
Bad idea.
I said you can. I didn't know how good the idea was. The book is here already.
Glad you've got it already.
Unless you want to give the other book.
Although, I think your gum is still here. I only have mine and I need to read it first.
Yeah, it is. Maybe I need some gum now.
Only if you're going to sleep and not cause any trouble.
I'm going to sleep for sure.
Go get your gum.
Open the door. I said there were two sentences. I could not stop thinking about it because they don't make grammatical sense given the context. I think it was a particular user who said sometimes in these coded combos there will be things that don't make sense. Now here's the thing. She told me he went there the night before this convo, but that she had his book in her backpack because it didn't fit in his, and he went there to get the book, and he was only there for 5 minutes. She also said she doesn't remember when she told me she was going to sleep, but in a separate convo, she says she only told me she had arrived at the hotel 15 minutes after she actually did. Now I know that I wrote her asking if she was still out 15 minutes after she arrived at the hotel, but she only called me 5 minutes later. I thought the book is here already and
Glad you've got it already
exchange was weird. Because if he did go there the previous night to get his book back, the already doesn't make sense. So here's what I'm very much convinced happened. He lost the book. There was no book legitimately. That's the excuse he used the night before this convo. That's why the following night she asks,
Where's your book?
The is it there? And
Maybe.
Are obviously teasing. But this is more in line with him getting her out of her room after she says,
My husband wrote me. I need to call him.
And then someone catching him. Because they went up to the room as soon as they got to the hotel, so they wouldn't be seen, and the other coworkers took longer. And that's the excuse he used. He was looking for his book, not, I want to get a book, because he's coming out empty-handed. So then the following day of the combo above, he says, the book is here already, as in, he found it already. Her reply now makes sense too, from that perspective.
Glad you've got it already.
As in, glad you found it already. Everything in this message is way more literal than we initially thought. And as such, gum is not an excuse. It's actual gum he left there the night before. Hence, here still. This explains two things. The red marks on her neck, all the way down to go in between her breasts, and the fact that there were no messages from the previous night whatsoever. Also, in the meantime, she admitted that the night of this convo, he stayed longer than 30 minutes and they fell asleep on the bed. I added those details on a reply here. She started using every single word I mentioned to her. As I mentioned them, this was intentional. First it was betrayal, then gaslighting, then manipulating, then trickle truth, then cheating. After denying those things, I waited until she came up with them on her own, but nope. She still claims no sex or kissing. I don't think she realized it was cheating, but more like using the same words I use so that it resembles remorse and admission of guilt. You're right, mental gymnastics. Even though she told me she sucks, I don't think she actually means it. And yeah, she already took part of the blame and tried to make a plan forward for us being together, including individual therapy, couples therapy, sleeping in separate rooms, etc. I've no doubt she'll convince some people. I've always thought that her explosive reaction to all of this was in part because she was caught and in part because I told her we're separating in the way that I did. Yeah, it felt cathartic telling her in person. I cried to her friend after she left, asked her if I hadn't been too harsh. Ugh. Now, regarding the sex or kissing, she kept sending me emails, retelling bits from our past, using inside jokes, telling me how work is, etc. I didn't reply. She did the same this morning, but I'm noticing they're getting shorter and less elaborate. Anyway, I told her if she ever wants to tell me the full truth, my emails are open. Until then, it's logistics only. She admitted to something new. That the third night Kay went to her room, he stayed for longer than 30 minutes and they fell asleep at one point. She woke him up and asked him to leave, and now she has no truth left, like she hadn't said that before. I caved and sent her a one-liner. F you. I'm not even sure I regret it. In the meantime, I've pieced together the second night, with all the info she gave me, everything I know, and the gaps I've filled. I'm updating in the post here. Update. I broke no contact. And it was worth it? The last email I sent my wife was F you. I thought that would be the end of it, and I would finally go no contact. The following day, she went to talk to my lawyer. I think she sent me a couple more emotional emails that day, talking about how she feels and what she's losing. That night, I decided to go out with my friends. I had a bit too much to drink, went to a club, and stayed there maybe 10 minutes before I had a small panic attack and had to go back home. Then I woke up to a dream where we were together, crying. I was asking her about the truth, and she wouldn't tell me. I stayed in bed crying for a good 15 minutes. I don't think I've ever been swept by such sadness, disappointment, and other feelings I don't have words for yet. So I sent her an email. I told her about the dream, about how much I missed her throughout my day. I told her I thought she loved me, but she still wasn't telling me the whole truth. She lied, she manipulated me, she gaslit me, and my mind is shattered because it can't hold these two realities. I told her that I hoped she'd find the attention, fun, and everything else she needed with her affair partner, or with someone else. That I hoped she'd build a home with them and have the beautiful children she's wanted for so long. That I hoped she'd be so successful in her career she could retire early and travel the world. I wished her all the best in the world, because unlike what she thinks, I don't hate her. I love her from the bottom of my heart. And that's why we couldn't be together. Because I'd make myself vulnerable again, get hurt again, get lied to again, and I simply can't handle that kind of pain ever again. I'm not drinking again anytime soon. She replied back asking to meet in person so she could tell me the truth. I agreed. She had gone to a different city where her best friend is living, so she had to take a train, and then book a hotel and go back the next day. She asked to meet at the hotel room. I knew it was a bad idea, but I knew talking in public wouldn't allow us both to say what we wanted to say. And I also knew that I could protect myself, so I agreed. I'm sure by now you've understood I'm a burning his hand in the stove to see if it's hot kind of guy. I knew I was not going to take her back, because I couldn't think of anything she could tell me at this point that could change my mind and how I felt about the whole thing. Keep in mind that she's shown very little concern or compassion for me this whole time. I knew that she was unlikely to tell me the whole truth, and even though I had a few new questions about certain details, I wasn't expecting her to reply with something that made sense. But I still hoped, deep down, that a miracle happened and she'd give me something that would allow me to close this and move forward. In the meantime, my lawyer sends me an email detailing their meeting, and says that she insisted on knowing the details of what I knew. Weird. So yesterday, before I entered the hotel, I started recording video and had a separate audio recorder in my jacket pocket, so that I had proof of what happened in the room and where I went after. My whole day is accounted for. I go inside, tell her this is her time, so she can tell me the truth. But if she starts raising her voice or lies, I will leave, and she'll never hear from me again. She starts telling me about her days in detail. I tell her I only care about the parts where she met him. She's staring at my eyes, doesn't blink the whole time. After each set of sentences, she pauses, as if she was probing me for a reaction to what she had just said. I ask her a few questions. She keeps going. I ask a few more questions. She contradicts things she said before. I double down on those questions before realizing that it's not worth it, because I don't know the answer either, so I can't just exit the room. I tell her, sure, we'll get back to it. We get to her retelling of the final night. I ask her how does a guy go to her room and fall asleep on her bed, given that the room is cold, and how do you just fall asleep if you were previously sitting on the bed talking? I ask her what were her intentions when she asked him to her room. She tells me it was just a talk, because she couldn't sleep and neither could he, which she couldn't possibly know. And when she was sleeping, he'd go away and they would both go to sleep separately. I asked her if she was 100% sure. She said yes. I said goodbye and that my lawyers would be in touch. I left the hotel and didn't look back. I knew from her messages she invited him specifically to only sleep and not to cause any trouble, which was more flirty than an actual demand. This was the final, undeniable confirmation she's just a horrible person. She came all the way down to my city, bought train tickets, booked a hotel room, for what? To try to gaslight me one more time, but in person? She's more effed up than I thought, and I want to be as far away from that as possible. After I left, she sent me a few emails asking me to go back because she had a gift for our cat. I was long gone by then. It was later that night when she sent me yet another email with the truth. She admitted she invited him to go and sleep on her bed, although she mentioned she called him when she actually texted him. She didn't want to sleep alone, but she also didn't want to screw him or kiss him, and she didn't. They talked, cuddled, and fell asleep. And then she woke up at one point and woke him up so he'd leave. She said that probably the alcohol wore off or the guilt overconsumed her. You know what's funny? She asked him to delete all of her messages on his phone, so neither of them remember what they actually wrote. I'm the only person with their full convo, and what was made very obvious through there. Back at her hotel room, I asked her to show me the convo with the affair partner that took place after I told her I'd be getting a divorce. He was telling her to call the police or the firemen for her to get inside the house, saying I couldn't do this, asking if she needed help, etc. It made me so much more disgusted at the whole thing. Today I woke up relieved? I still have a tiny knot in my stomach, but my sadness and compassion for her were replaced with what I think is anger. And that's an easier emotion to handle. It drives me forward to move on and get over this because now I see her through a facade and how colossal of a bullet I've dodged. I might even call it a closure. Disclaimer, this was extremely taxing and I don't recommend anyone to go through this unless you know you can handle it. And even then, it'll be hard. Update. After sending her last email confessing she invited the affair partner to sleep with her, she went silent for longer than at any point during this last week and a half. I had a gut feeling she was up to something, and then I got this email. It's surreal to me how quickly you got a lawyer, how quickly you packed up all of my belongings, how quickly you decided to end 8 years. It really makes me think you've had this up your sleeve for a long time. How quickly everyone turned their backs on me. You, your friends, your family. No one cares about me. How long have you planned this? How long have you been lying about loving me? How long has everyone hated me? Have I not given all of me to you for the last 8 years? Have I not forgiven you so often for deceiving me, for lying to me, for hurting me? Have I not been there for your friends and your family in hard times? Have I not loved and still love you and everyone in your life? No one gives an F about me. The only person who has shown any concern has been your lawyer, telling me he's concerned about my belongings. No one. Not one person. How long has you planned for this? Where was I while you planned for this? Was I planning Christmas gifts for your mom while you were planning to throw me out? Was I reaching out to your friends to make sure they were doing okay throughout the pandemic while you were planning to lock me out of my life? Was I wiping your tears away when you were feeling insecure and building you up when you felt like you weren't good enough while you were thinking those exact thoughts about me? When did this begin? Have I been asleep for the last 8 years? Have you never loved me? Has no one ever loved me? What is the meaning of life? Who am I if I've been nothing to you or your friends or your family for the last 8 years? If I've sacrificed my family, my friends, everything to be here, to make this my home, while the entire time you are plotting how to get rid of me from it? I love your family. I love your friends. I love you. Why does no one love me back? End of email. I had a feeling she would turn it against me in order to justify her actions to herself and her family, which I haven't told yet. I had no idea how she would do it though. I thought she would use me liking Instagram photos to imply something else, which she hints at, as she's done before, in the line, for deceiving me, for lying to me, for hurting me. This is absolutely delusional, and I know this is the story she'll take to the people who don't know yet. It's also designed to get a response from me, which I will refrain from. I wish I could though, just so that she realizes her delusion. Update. In the last email my soon-to-be ex-wife sent me, she mentioned that her brother knew she was a cheater. All that was left was her parents, and then she would have no one left to support her. Now, I knew this was a bit too dramatic because only 3 of her friends actually know what happened. But I honestly thought she had told her brother because he's family and they're close. I was further led to believe this because he sent me a message showing support, that if I needed anything or someone to talk to, he's family and he loves me and he was there for me. And I don't doubt it for a second. He truly is a good person. But something didn't sit right. If he actually knew, his message would have been a different tone. So I called him. I called him even though that's what you shouldn't do when a narcissist is running a smear campaign. Lo and behold, she told him I might have seen some messages and I thought she had cheated, so I kicked her out of the house. She made me look like the insecure, jealous, bad guy who kicked her out based on a hunch. I hadn't told her family yet because I wanted to give her that dignity, and yes, I know some of you will tell me I told you so, but now I see how blind I was thinking that she would actually come clean, or at least to the extent she came clean to me. I told her brother that she had admitted to cheating without going into details, but details shall be leaked if she keeps up her games. She's also been no contact since Tuesday, but I'm expecting an angry, "How dare you?" email sometime soon. Update. Not a, "How dare you?" email, but came dangerously close. I know you talked to my brother. My mom might call you because she won't leave me alone,
Please don't answer. She knows something is wrong, but no full details yet. My dad goes home on Wednesday. I'll talk to them next weekend. Please don't share anything with my parents. I will. It's unfair for you to talk to my family. You've already told and involved my friend without my consent. Our crap is none of my family's business until I make it their business. I know I wrote your sister and I apologize, but I did so in a moment of distress and not clearly thinking. Now that we're weeks away from this, please let's be clearer in our thinking and not continue wreaking havoc in each other's lives. Thank you.
Update. I left out an important detail. Because I was afraid my soon-to-be ex-wife would come across my series of posts considering how popular they got. I'm pretty sure she hasn't, given that her emails have been pretty consistent. Well, consistent for her, and she hasn't mentioned any details which could only be obtained here. As soon as I had my suspicions, after the first night, she invited Kay to her room, I went looking for a PI. Had to reach out to a few. It's not easy when you're from a different country, and you need it done fast. Most didn't reply. One of them thought it was too complicated. And this guy with a crappy website actually agreed to it. I couldn't help but feel like I was going to be ripped off, but I really had no options left. I knew it was going to be too expensive to have him follow her the whole day, and it wouldn't give me anything new, considering what I already knew, so I had to come up with a better plan. I knew that if she had invited Kay to her room, she'd do it again. I talked about this with the PI, but he said there wasn't much he could do because he didn't want to break into hotel rooms to bug them and whatnot, and that was too risky. I told him there was no need to break in. We would just have to wait for her to invite Kay, and then the PI could go and record whatever happened in the room from the outside. He agreed, after I sent him a nice chunk of money up front. I gave him the heads up on the second night, and when she headed back to the hotel, we didn't manage to go through with it that night because there were no messages exchanged between my soon-to-be ex-wife and Kay, and neither of us wanted to blow our cover. The third night, though, she made it really easy. I gave the PI the heads up, and when she got to the hotel, he had to wait a bit because she spent a while in the lobby talking to some coworkers. Then she went up, started messaging Kay, and I knew it was game on. They made it so easy for me when Kay told her to open the door. The PI went up, and that's the last I heard from him. I thought I had been ripped off, and he didn't even go to the hotel and had played me this whole time. He didn't reply to my messages, didn't pick up my calls, until he reached out this morning. He apologized because he had some issue with his phone, lost all of his contacts, and only managed to recover them recently. He asked me for my email address so he could send me the recording. It's a long audio file. I haven't listened to most yet because I can't bring myself to do it. I can't bring myself to hear them talk about whatever they talked. I can only imagine, but I know nothing I'm imagining is as painful as hearing her voice and his voice, sharing intimacy. It's just too painful, and I don't need to relive that any more than I already had when I was watching it all unfold in real time. In the email, the PI mentioned a specific timestamp. I listened to that bit alone. It was faint. I think they were trying to keep it quiet because of coworkers next door, but when I turned up the volume, it was pretty obvious. They screwed. They freaking did it. I prayed this whole time to hear this from her because I thought somehow it would be less painful. It's ironic I actually heard it from her in the most devastating kind of way. Update. My soon-to-be ex-wife sent me this long email which feels honest but also kind of off. It's the first email where she lays it out and doesn't try to blame me. She makes several mentions of her being a narcissist, which is something new. I feel like she's read about narcissists and their traits, and now she's framing everything from that perspective. See her mention about Narcissism 101. I won't reply to it. I'm staying no contact, but it actually gives me some peace because it's the first email that is not delusional. What are your thoughts?
I know you don't love me anymore, but I still love you. I'll always love you. You are the biggest part of my life. No one knows me like you do. No one ever will. You've seen all of my ugly sides, and I'd like to think you've also seen the beautiful parts of me. And although the ugly overshadows the beautiful now, the beautiful still exists. You know my heart, my weaknesses, my best and my worst. You know it all, probably better than I do. I will love you forever because I know those sides of you as well. I've seen it all, every side of you. I see you. You have given me so much. You have supported me whenever I felt insecure, afraid, or sad. You have lifted me up from the dark more times than I can count. I was lost and scared when we met, unsure of where I belong in the world, and then you found me. You guided me. You brought me home, the only home I've ever known. The only place that has felt like home has been next to you, with you. You taught me how to love myself, how to work hard and go after what I want, how to not give up. It's mind-blowing how much we built together. Two college kids who didn't get a head start like many of our friends and peers. We built Business 1 from the dining table. We built Business 2 from a silly idea I Googled 5 minutes before pitching it for the first time. We built careers in respectable fields by learning everything in our living room. And I truly believe it was all possible because we are an unmatched team. We supported one another through it all. I worked a miserable job that made me so unhappy while you learned a skill. You stuck with the company, and they didn't appreciate you while I learned about the skill. There is nothing we can't do together. But I lost sight of that. I got too wrapped up in validation and feeling worthy in someone else's eyes. I lost myself, who I really am, who only you know. I'm sorry for that. I've struggled with validation my whole life. It's partly because my family only cares how things appear for others, and partly because I don't believe I'm good enough. I know my false sense of confidence and my narcissism would make people believe otherwise, but I know I'm not good enough. I go out of my way to make my friends like me because I don't believe they would like me for just being myself. I send them gifts and overly praise them for minor things. I make myself available to everyone and anyone going through a hard time, usually at the expense of myself. I do this both to help, but also to get validation that I'm a good person, a good friend, a good employee. You're right. When I was struggling throughout this last month, I didn't ask for help. I didn't keep it real or let you in. I expected you to read my mind, to see the signs, so I wouldn't have to admit my weakness. I thought you'd think less of me for being weak, for not handling my crap or not saying no, not taking care of myself when it seemed so simple. I thought I'd have to explain why I'm incapable of saying no, that I'd have to remove the shield of confidence and worthiness to reveal who I truly am, afraid and less than. But you already knew that. I wouldn't be revealing anything new. Instead, I sought validation for the opposite of what I believed. I fished for compliments at work to make me believe I actually knew what I was doing and could succeed in this job. I stayed up all night talking to my best friend when best friend's ex broke up with her so I could be told I was a good friend. I guilted you into not bringing up difficult conversations so I wouldn't feel guilty for not making time or being honest. And then, Kay. I've never seen myself as beautiful or interesting or smart. I know that being a narcissist, that's hard to believe, but it's true. I pick myself apart constantly. Every time we're out with friends and I talk too much or too passionately, I come home and beat myself up about it. I replay the conversation in my head over and over. I'd put on clothes and prance around you, fishing for a compliment to make you believe I was beautiful or sexy. As I started losing weight, things got worse. You'd tell me I was beautiful all the time, but I couldn't believe it. It's why I fished for it so often. I wanted to believe it. So to be so skinny, so unhealthy, and have a douchebag with muscles find me attractive or interesting, it validated me. It's a choice I made. No excuses. But between the insecurity and the fear, afraid of having a panic attack alone, I sought his attention. I wanted to feel cared for. I wanted to think I was interesting, beautiful, smart. It didn't work. No one could make me feel safe or cared for, or beautiful, or anything but you. No one ever did, and no one ever will. I know it's hard to believe anything I say, and I don't blame you for that. I have lost all credibility. I did that to myself. But I need you to know that this was not premeditated. I didn't step out of line physically before going there. I wasn't talking to him for weeks or months before the other country. I didn't feel anything for him, then or now. It was an opportunistic mistake, a screw-up, bad decision, life-altering choice. If he wasn't there, it could have been someone else. He means nothing, now, then, or ever. I was just seeking attention so I'd feel better about myself. Narcissism 101. I only thought about myself. I didn't consider how it would affect you. You're also right that I probably would have come home and kept it from you. But I also know that we were planning to speak on Sunday about all of the hard things. And I was mentally preparing for that. Preparing to share how I'd been hurting myself and putting everything at risk. But I don't know if I would have shared what happened in the other country. It's so unfair that I committed to trying everything before throwing this away. And then I didn't follow through. Instead of relying on my best friend, the best person in my life, I instead hurt you. You are an incredible man, a one of a kind. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate it enough. End of email. Alright, I think it's time we get some community comments. IRL Dean says, my thoughts are that she's trying to make herself feel better by showing you what was going on inside of her head prior to cheating on you. One thing about narcissists that I know is that they do not understand the effect that their behavior has on people. Sure, people can change, but how much can we really believe that they have? You mentioned that this is the first email that isn't delusional. It could be a way for her to manipulate you more into thinking that she deserves a second chance. The next thought comes from Tinfoil Hats and Bats. Exactly. This is merely to alleviate guilt and rationalize her thought process. It's not an actual apology or demonstration of understanding any of what OP is feeling or the damage she caused to him.
It's all about her. She's blaming narcissism for her selfishness, and it's a convenient excuse. True clinical narcissists are like 1% of the diagnosed population, and they don't ever admit it. She's just a selfish person with excuses, poor coping, and cognitive gymnastics. Not the same thing. The OP responds, first email that isn't delusional. But yeah, there is still not much understanding for what her behavior caused. It's all very me. Her justification makes sense, but it still doesn't feel genuine. Anon8607 says, yeah, I skimmed through that, and I couldn't find her confession. Not one. This wasn't her being completely honest. This was her bigging you up to make her seem like she's a better person. Send her the audio clip and ask her to admit it, if you even want to talk to her anymore. Edit. Even better, just reply with a simple, I now have proof. Then watch her squirm trying to figure out how, why, when you could possibly have gotten proof. Quick update. Just wanted to give you all a quick update. I've been radio silent for a bit because posting here and replying to y'all was keeping me stuck in the loop and reliving the whole thing again and again. There were days where I barely did any work. On the other hand, I couldn't have done this without all of your support, so thank you, seriously. I've been doing therapy 1 time a week, and it's been really helpful. Gym 4 times a week. Started going to a climbing gym. Started redecorating the house. It's extremely hard for me to work from home, so I'm moving things around. Today's probably the first day when I've been able to bring my whole self to work again and really focus. Been going out on the weekends, but I always go home before my friends because I'm learning how to enjoy the weekends better. They were the hardest, the loneliest. Been enjoying going out and drinking less because honestly, alcohol does not help at all. I have so much to work on myself and to bring myself to a point where I can be a high-value partner, but I'm also at a point where I know that going back to her would throw all that work I started away. Maybe it hasn't been clear from my posts, but reconciliation was in the back of my head at one point or another. Not anymore. I've started the divorce process a couple of weeks ago, waiting for the papers to be translated, and at some point, they'll get in touch with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'll update again when the divorce is finished. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout this. Update. Progress is far from a straight line. For some reason, my posts on r/surviving infidelity keep getting auto-flagged, so I'm posting here instead. Possible trigger warning. This post talks about my soon-to-be ex-wife's attempts at self-deletion. I've recently posted an update regarding my personal progress under my profile and how the divorce process has been started. Well, my soon-to-be ex-wife attempted self-deleting twice. I say attempted because most signs point to a fake attempt. First time, she took 20 sleeping pills, woke up, told her best friend she was staying with, and they went to a hospital. Her best friend called me, telling me my soon-to-be ex-wife had asked her to call. I called the hospital. They discharged her saying she didn't need to be observed any longer, since she told them she was already being followed by a psychiatrist. I didn't talk to my soon-to-be ex-wife about this, but she called a friend of mine asking how he was doing and if he wanted to meet for coffee. Not to talk about me, but about him as friends. Then she mentioned taking the pills and going to the hospital and asked him not to tell me. Little did she know, I had already told my friend. 2 days later, she was going out to a club. The second time was when she came back to our city. She was staying at her temporary apartment. Her best friend was coming to town that day. This time I hear it straight from my wife in the worst possible way. She sends me a gibberish message, like something you'd type when you're drunk. Then a video of her in the back of an ambulance. Then, back here. I tried to get to an understanding of what had happened from her, but she would only send me audio messages of her speaking very faintly or gibberish texts. Then she told me to ask her best friend. The best friend didn't give me much info, just told me she had overdosed again, was at the hospital, was fine, and her parents had been informed, which explains the message I got from her dad in this foreign language asking, "What have you done to her?" I sent my soon-to-be ex-wife one last text, telling her to write me about what happened when she was able to write again. Next day, she sends me an email with an image of a digital drawn note in red and blue. I could not make the words out, but this was seriously the most terrifying email I've ever got from her. I send this to her best friend and ask her if she's actually fine because this doesn't seem like fine. She told me my soon-to-be ex-wife took 3 different pills, like 30 of them. Hospital didn't keep her there because they didn't think it was psychosis. She asked me to not reply to my soon-to-be ex-wife because that set her back, and to put the divorce on hold, which I agreed to. They both went back to the city her best friend was staying at, so that she wasn't alone. Finally, she told me she thought this was only for attention and to contact her for anything urgent. Wife sends me an email saying she tried to kill herself and was really close to dying, then later asked me if I didn't have anything to say, ask about that. A week after the incident, she sends me an email opening with, "In case you forgot what your wife looks like, followed by a bunch of photos of her at the hospital, on a wheelchair, then passed out on IV, then,
Super hot. You should be worried about all the men I'm dating and screwing behind your back.
I sent this to her friend because I thought she had done it yet again. Her friend replies with a facepalm emoji and told me it was from the previous weekend. A few days later, wife asked me if she can have the contract to our apartment because everywhere else they ask for a cosigner and she doesn't have one. I asked her friend if I can communicate this through her, since she made herself available for that before. To what she tells me, they had a falling out and my soon-to-be ex-wife is coming back to our city. I suppose she got tired of her BS, or my soon-to-be ex-wife got mad at her for being in contact with me. Who knows? I didn't ask. At one point, my soon-to-be ex-wife emails me about how she understood that divorce was the only solution after everything that happened over the last couple of months, and how we didn't need lawyers and could handle all of this on our own. I said fine, and told her again what I was asking for. Then she goes into wanting us to be cordial, and for me to be kind, but she doesn't tell me at any point what does she want, so that we can negotiate somehow. She asked me how I got to those numbers, and I gave her undeniable proof that I'm actually asking for too little, given all my contributions, monetary and otherwise. She never talks about this again. Days later, one of her coworkers who was on the trip calls me to see if he could help. He asked if I wanted to meet, or to record the conversation, but he didn't know how it worked in legal terms. This smelled fishy right away, and I said we could talk by phone. He asked if I wanted to ask details about any of the days. I said no because that would give away what I know, and honestly, I don't care at this point. Also, I had a feeling he'd tell me anyway. So he does, of course in a very vague way. He said it was very unlikely that something happened because he, another guy, and Kay were always together. The only day when something could have possibly happened was when they all went to the sauna, and afterwards the three guys were in their room and Kay said he was going to my soon-to-be ex-wife's room to see if they still wanted to hang out, but he was only there for 3 minutes. This guy talked for 20 minutes and I said very little. But for some reason, I mentioned that her self-deletion attempts could be of retention, that this wasn't just my opinion. A couple of hours later, my soon-to-be ex-wife sends me an angry email about how she's not doing this for attention. All her other emails since have been about how she doesn't think she can make it, she's not worth it, she's a piece of crap, etc. She has an appointment to renew her visa a month and a half from now, which is the only thing standing between the divorce at this point. I had to type all this out and share it with y'all because I feel like I'm gaslighting myself. Feeling pity for her and getting softer. The thought of somehow getting her back to the house until she gets help has crossed my mind. Of course, it's quickly followed by all the reasons why that can't happen. This has been far, far from easy. It's been a freaking roller coaster. I think overall I'm making good progress personally, even if our separation is further along than it was 2 months ago. If these things had happened at the beginning, I'm not sure how I would have reacted. So to everyone who's struggling, be strong. It gets better. Final update. I am so thankful she cheated. Last time I updated y'all, it didn't really end on a high note. Most of my posts didn't. So here's something for a change. My soon-to-be ex-wife's emails continued after the last time I posted. More of the same, excuses, threats, etc. At some point, she started sending me recordings of her conversation with her therapist, without her consent. My curiosity couldn't keep me away from listening, but I knew well that she would use this conversation as justification and let me do the interpretation without her having to do any of the work. I wasn't wrong. One weekend, she didn't write. She'd always write more on the weekends. I spent its entirety waiting for her to write, but she didn't. A week passes. I'm starting to feel relieved, like I finally got a massive weight off of my shoulders. The next weekend, Saturday morning, I'm tidying up the house and get a sudden impulse to listen to her last therapy recording. I listened to the whole full hour, and again, more of the same. Victim blaming, blame shifting, gaslighting, etc. But in the final minutes, she says,
You know what? F him.
And that was it. F him? Well, F you, I said out loud, laughing. The weight was completely off. In that same day, I installed a new dating app and swiped on a few profiles, just to see what's out there. Later that day, a friend was asking me, how's the dating world? And I said, dating is the furthest thing away from my mind, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be single for the rest of the year. I had been on Tinder and quickly grew tired of all the small talk and attention seeking. When I wake up the next day, I have a few matches. One of them from a girl who really caught my eye. We exchanged maybe 10 messages total and agreed to meet later that day. 1 hour drive away from home. We meet up and I feel an instant vibe. We were just going to stay for a drink, but everything was going so well, we stayed for dinner, and then stayed at a bar until it closed. We kissed and made plans to meet again. By the end of the 5th date, we were head over heels for each other. She knows everything about my soon-to-be ex-wife. She knows everything about me, to be honest, and I feel like I've known her my entire life. And if this sounds like a rebound or overcorrecting, I've thought about that considerably. We both have, because she got out of a relationship recently too. And we're both such rational people that we both come to the conclusion that we had done our healing. We were not looking for anything serious, but it made so much sense from every single point of view that we'd be fools to not jump in. In our last day together, she asked me to go live with her in her country. We'd spent 5 days together at this point. I don't hesitate for a second. This was 2.5 months ago. We've been living together for 3 weeks, and everything we felt and believed we knew about each other has been confirmed multiple times. We have so much in common that it's scary how we lived completely separate lives in separate cultures and ended up being so alike. I'm so thankful my wife cheated because that relationship wasn't meant to work, and I dodged massive bullets right there. I wouldn't have met this new person otherwise. I hope this post gives you some hope. It's what I wish I had read at the start of all of this. We have a reaction from Rubicon Man 1970. Wow, it sounds like it's going to be great. I'm happy for you. I've been single for 6 years now, still waiting to find my new match. She found hers, now for me. Happy for you, buddy. Classic Tumbleweed 1 chimes in next. This. If all my exes hadn't cheated, I'd never have found the most amazing, wonderful, and perfect for me person. He helps me grow every day. He is making me a better person, and god dang, he loves me for freaking me. I thank the gods every day my exes cheated. Otherwise, I never would have found my person. Tertier78 has the closing comment. You're both such rational people that after 5 days of dating, you moved countries and in together? Good that things are working out so far, but this isn't the healthy speed for a relationship. Maybe you bucked the trend, but y'all are both still very damaged people with a lot of unresolved trauma. Be very careful here with what you consider healthy behavior.